I got a really good Bigfoot encounter for you tonight. I got Brian with me, and Brian's from Missouri. Brian's also a veteran, a combat veteran, and he's also a Native American, and I love to talk to people like that because of their heritage, their history. But he had an encounter one night about 3 o'clock in the morning when he was out in the country with his wife. This massive Bigfoot creature walked right in front of him. We're also going to be talking about some different things in his heritage, some different encounters from around the area. This is a great episode, and you don't want to miss a second of it. But before we jump into any of that, if you've had an encounter, I would love to hear it. You can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into his story.
My name is Brian Williams. I grew up on a farm in North Missouri. Farmed our whole lives. Went in the service right out of high school. Became a paratrooper. Stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Was in the 82nd Airborne. Did several tours. Got out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and come back. And I become a farmer, and I farmed for several years. I was very avid outdoorsman, hunting and fishing all over North America and Canada. So, being in the outdoors was definitely nothing new for me. My background and my heritage is full-blooded Native American. My mother is a Halapu Indian from the Halapu tribe from Newfoundland, Canada. My father married her when he was in the Air Force, and he is from Oklahoma, from the Indian Nations of Oklahoma. So our background and heritage is 100% Native American. I'm retired now. We're retired from North Missouri and moved to South Missouri down to the Lake of the Ozarks region. But anyway, in 2018, I was getting ready to retire, and I was driving my wife to work every morning. We were shutting down, downsizing on equipment and everything, and I sold out. I had downsized to one vehicle. I was bringing my wife to work. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and this was up by kind of in between Plattsburgh and Lathrop, Missouri, up a 116 highway. It was in the fall of the year. Actually, a pretty nice night. It wasn't a stormy night, anything like that. It was a pretty nice night, a clear night. And we were driving down a gravel road, and something come out of the cornfield, and I remember the corn was just about ready to be harvested. And at first, my first thought was, it's a deer. It's that time of year. There's always deer coming out. I hit my brakes, and when it came out, it wasn't a deer. It was on two legs. And when a deer runs, it has an up and down motion. This did not. This was very smooth, very flat, and very precise, to the point, and fast. It was graceful and almost kind of like took my breath away. But my wife was sitting right next to me, and she seen the whole thing too. With my heritage and always being told that them were real, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I honestly didn't know what I was seeing for a minute or two. I kept looking at it thinking, am I really seeing what I'm thinking I'm seeing? And it crossed the road, and I can remember it just clear as day. When it crossed the road, the hair was not matted. The hair was pretty clean. I could not see anywhere the hair was matted, but I remember its hands were large and its knuckles were very ugly. Like every knuckle was very large and calloused, like a diesel mechanic that had been in the field for 70, 80 years. You know, when you see an old mechanic's hands, how their hands are always, their knuckles are always busted up, kind of like that. But when it run across the road, its arms were swinging, and for whatever reason, them knuckles stuck out. Uh, they really stuck out to me. It's almost like they caught my attention. And it went across the road. There was a little ditch and then a barbed wire fence, and it went across both of them and then off into another stand of big, heavy, mature timber. And once it got into that timber, it just vanished. It was gone. And I continued driving. I didn't say anything for a moment. I was still trying to wrap my head around it. And I got down the road just a little, maybe 2 to 3 minutes. My wife looked at me and I looked at her and I said, "Did you see what I just saw?" And she said, "That was on two legs." And we stopped and we talked about it. And we have never spoke about that up until just maybe about a month ago. And the reason is everybody up there knew us. We were farmers in the area. I'd farmed in that area for years and years, and I've never seen nothing like that. What was all the local people going to say? He was out drinking one night, or, all the places in North America, in the Rocky Mountains, through the Blue Ridge Parkway that I've been and camped for weeks at a time. I've heard strange things, very strange things, but I've never seen nothing like that, not on two legs. And it was strong, I can tell you, very strong.
The first thing I want to say is, I can understand why you didn't want to talk about it. It's the whole premise behind this channel, because a lot of times people sit on these encounters for years because they're afraid of ridicule. So I can understand that. And thanks for being brave enough to come forward with it. That takes a lot of guts to do. But, how big and broad do you think this thing was?
That is one of the things me and my wife discuss quite a bit. I always seem like the Patterson, Rimland, Bluff Creek Bigfoot crossing the creek, and in my brain, that's kind of what this wasn't near that big. It was about my size, a little bit bigger than me, but a lot stronger looking. I mean, like a lot bulkier. But I also don't believe it was a female by any means, because it had the chest of like a young man. In the Patterson video, if you look, and I'm not trying to be funny or nothing, but that does have breasts like a female. If you really look at that video, that has breasts like a female. What I seen did not. It had breasts like a man, like an athlete, like a well-built, muscular man. But it was only maybe 6.5 to 7 feet tall. So me and my wife thought maybe it was a younger adolescent, not a completely full-grown one or something like that, because I had never even heard of a Bigfoot sighting in North Missouri at that time. And I got on the BFRO and later found out within 5 miles of my farm where I owned land and lived, there had been multiple Bigfoot sightings in the bottoms where we had property and we mushroom hunted, all around 0.6 of a mile from my farm on my gravel road. An over the road truck driver had one cross on my gravel road right at our property, and I never even knew it, and there were these reports coming in all around our property, and I never had a clue all these years. Kind of a weird deal, really.
I think there's a lot of people just like you, man. These things, people think they're always in the north or Pacific Northwest. They don't think about Arkansas, Missouri, places like that. But man, they're all over. I get reports sent to me all the time from Missouri, from my home state of Arkansas. They're all over the place. I think a lot of it's because of the cave systems. They can travel back and forth. I mean, your sighting is, I know it happened really fast and it doesn't really give you time to process all this stuff. But man, what emotions were you feeling right after you saw that? Like, how did that affect you?
Yeah, I know I've said it once or twice, but I almost felt like, did I really just see that? Was that real? That couldn't have been what I just thought I saw. That's really the kind of first thing that went through my mind. Like all the hours, the days, the weeks I've spent in the woods, in the wild, in a tent, miles from anywhere. Now I'm leaving my farm, taking my wife to work, and something crosses the road right there by my farm. It was kind of ridiculous to me. It was unbelievable to me. Does that make sense? Like, I'd have thought if I'd have seen something like that, it would have been maybe up in the Colorado Rockies or something where I was 50 miles from a paved road, not right off my own farm.
I think most people would be surprised what's in their backyard. If you live anywhere that is rural and there's food sources and all these different things, I mean, they're probably there. I want to know what you think, man, because I've tried to figure this out and I don't have any good answers. But why do you think that they do that? Where they walk out in front of a vehicle? Man, what do you think that's about?
I'm not really sure. The way our incident happened, it was almost like there's no way the creature didn't know we were not. It couldn't have been a surprise. We were coming down a flat area through a corn bottom that it would have known a mile before we got there a vehicle was coming. So it waited until we were in that area to cross the road. But at the same time, we're in the middle of nowhere at 3:30 in the morning in the cold in the fall. Uh, I know it wasn't kids, and there ain't no way nobody in a suit could have crossed that road and crossed the fence the way that did. So for me, everything that happened was just kind of so unreal. It just left me in probably disbelief for maybe 2 or 3 days. I just kept running through it, going, "Did that really happen? Like, did that really just happen?" It's kind of was hard to take in.
Yeah, I can understand that. It is a life-changing experience, and I know in your heritage, it's all throughout your heritage, with your background and you've heard lots of stories, but when you see one, it's completely different and it does affect you in a either positive or negative way. Some people it really really messes with, but with your wife seeing it as well, how did that affect her? What happened with her? How did she handle that?
It was 180 degrees different for her. I've always been a believer. I've always known they were out there. Um, she was always kind of the one to kind of laugh at us and say, "Man, I can't believe you believe in that. Ha ha." Now she's the one that's like, "I ain't going out in the woods. Forget that. Them things are real." Now that she knows that, she's much, much more aware that there are things out there that when we were children we thought they were nightmares, but they really do exist. I mean, there really are nightmares out there that are real. And maybe mom and dad tried to hide them when we were growing up to make us feel safe.
That makes a lot of sense to me, man. Like once you know these things are real, they're out there. It opens up your mind to what else could be out there, and all these different kinds of encounters that you hear. People are seeing stuff, and they're 100% real, and they affect people every single day. And it takes a lot of guts to tell these stories. I know that you have a lot of heritage where this is all in your culture. It's been talked about. And I know you have several different stories and encounters you wanted to talk about. So, man, I would love to hear them if you're open to share them.
Oh yeah, I would definitely love that. My aunt, of course, she's Native American too. When I was young, and by young I mean probably say 6, 7, 8 years old, I remember her telling us a story. And my uncle was a big man. He was a very large man. He was probably 6'5", 6'6". Um, and he wasn't the kind of feller you just wanted to run up and jump on. He drank quite a bit, and he's a big Indian, and he definitely could hold his own. And they loved to fish, and they were from Arkansas, as a matter of fact, and they went fishing one time, and I cannot remember the town they lived in at the time, but they went fishing to a river, and it had an old cabin that was still partially standing at the edge of that river. And when they pulled up of an evening, something come out of that cabin, and my uncle and aunt, it was in their headlights, and they did not even get out of the car. They said they backed up and left and would not even go fishing. They said they knew that thing was there, and that was probably, I'm going to say, well before like the legend of Boggy Creek and all that became like a big famous thing in 72 or 73, whenever it came out. I can't remember, but that would have been quite a few years before that. But it was down in the swampy area somewhere in Arkansas too, but I can't remember where it was at. But this is years and years before that even became famous. My aunt was talking about that stuff going on. So that's kind of a weird deal there. But I mean, and today, uh, believe it or not, and I'm sure if you're doing podcasts on it, you probably do still know that that Folk, Arkansas, that activity is still going on today. It has never quit.
No, man, it's still very active. I get reports out of there all the time. I mean, that whole area is just wild. I've drove through there. I've never been out in the area, but I do hear stuff all the time, continually. Now, that's a pretty scary encounter that your aunt had, and I can understand why that shakes people up so much. And I would be interested to know if that happened in Falk, Arkansas, or that area. But I know you fast forward and you move to a different part of Missouri, and you were telling me, prior to the interview, that there was more activity happening and different things happening in that area. Man, would you go into some of that if you're open to it?
Oh, absolutely. When I bought the property that I own now, that we are retired on, we did not even have electricity or water on the property. As a matter of fact, I had a shop set up, but I did not even have a home set up yet. I had a camper. I bought a real nice camper, and we were going to make do with the camper until I got a home built. And I was having the electricity and the water plumbed in on the camper. Well, we was running the camper with the generator until all that got done. And I went out one night. It was on a Friday night. I went out and I was going to shut the generator down and refuel it for the weekend. And I went out, and it was probably 11:30, and it was very windy. It was extremely windy that night, and it was in the fall, cold and windy. And I heard some screams, and my hearing is not that good anymore. So I opened the door and I hollered for my wife, and I told her, I said, Julie, I said, come out here. You've got to hear this. I said, pretty sure this is not something I know what it is. So she came out and she listened to it. And I told her, I said, that's nothing I know what it is. I'm telling you, I don't know that noise because I'm getting so hard of hearing. Sometimes a turkey sounds like a dog or whatever. My hearing is really getting bad. But I knew that noise was something I hadn't heard before. And she had no idea what it was either. Well, the next morning, our waterman, who is still the waterman here today, when they come to hook our water meter up, he happened to start talking to me, and he asked me, he said, man, was you outside last night? Did you hear all those screams? What was that? And me and him actually had a pretty long talk. He was from Indiana originally. He grew up out in the wild. He said he has never heard anything like that in his life. You guys know my background. I've told you what I've done. I've never heard nothing like that. And here both of us are in South Missouri, and we're hearing the same thing on the same night for probably a good 30 to 45 minutes. And this wasn't right in our valley. This was probably, I'm going to say, within 2 miles. But around here, it was hard for me to tell what area it was coming from because all these valleys sound the same to me. I can't tell. But I could tell it wasn't right around us. It was a distance away, but it was still loud enough to hear. He talked to me in depth about that, and neither one of us knew what it was. Last year in 2024, a hunter down here at Lake of the Ozarks had an encounter and ended up having to pack his camp up and leave this area because he was having some kind of Bigfoot problems at night, you know. This year, this year at 2025, the week of August 9th, my anniversary, me and my wife were in Branson, and I'm sure you can look this up on all the Bigfoot pages and all that. There was a big sighting down in Branson, Missouri. We were on vacation down there that week, and that was at Top of the Rock, I think they call it, state site. It's a place with a bunch of pretty waterfalls and a little river and stuff. But I guess a bunch of people went up there early in the morning, and they were going to go on a hike. And lo and behold, one gets up and goes running up into the woods in front of 8 or 10 people down there. So been a lot of activity in this area in the last 8 or 10 years. It seems like it's really just blown up. But that might be because, uh, since COVID, Lake of the Ozarks and this whole untouched Ozark region is now it's been bought up, and a lot of it is, being moved into. And I think that's going to probably bring more and more sightings up as we go along.
I think a lot of the times these sightings are popping up because these things move through cave systems. The Ozarks have so many different cave systems that these things can move through. I know in Arkansas, it's all connected, man. You're pretty close to me. We get sightings that pop up all the time, and it doesn't shock me that the Branson area has them. And you get outside of Branson, it's pretty rural. There's a lot of places they can be and things like that. I'm really curious with your Native American heritage. What your thoughts are on this and maybe what the history of it is in whatever tribe you belong to. But what do you think these things are, man? Like having that encounter, having that history, what's your thoughts on that?
It's actually kind of funny that you would ask that. I have thought and thought and thought very deeply since I've had my encounter. This year, myself and my brother went to South Missouri to the Trail of Tears. I talked to the guy from the Cherokee tribes that's covered in Bigfoot tattoos, and I brought it up to him, and I asked, and I might get laughed, I might get ridiculed over this, but it doesn't go beyond reason to me. The Navajo are probably the most well-known Indians in the world for being shapeshifters. I mean, when you talk about shapeshifter, everybody goes to the Navajo. What about ancient tribe of Indian that coexisted with or before the Navajo? And when white man came, maybe they didn't want to deal with white man at all, so they kind of pushed off further into the woods, and they became what we call today Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
It's a very interesting theory, and I firmly believe that the truest statement I've ever heard with this is when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood, and when they're not, they're not. You hear a lot of different Native American tribes that have a bunch of different history and theories and stories, and they're all different, but the one thing they have in common is they believe this creature was real and true. And so I always like to hear people's thoughts and opinions. I think that they can be absolutely 100% shapeshifters. I know that sounds really strange coming out of your mouth, but I believe that can be true, and that's a really interesting theory. I think these things can be more than flesh and blood, but do you think they are more than that, or do you think they're just a flesh and blood creature, if you had to guess?
If you'd have asked me 20 years ago, I'd have probably said no, they are a flesh and blood spiritual creature. They're flesh and blood, but they just carry a spiritual awe about them. Today, uh, you know, I'm really not sure, and I don't want to sound like a quack, but after all the reports of UFOs have been sighted in the same area of Bigfoot so many times, there's this encounter and then there's this other encounter. There's always some weird coincidences. I really don't know. They're talking about different parallel universes and, all that kind of stuff. I really don't know. And I don't feel it's right for me to say, well, this person's theory or the way you guys look at this is really dumb. The way I look at it's right. Maybe the way I look at it's dumb, and the way they're looking at it's right. I don't know, but it's I don't. I wish I really could look at it and say, well, this is the way it is. I don't know. It's To this day, I don't know. I couldn't tell you 100%. Yes, that's an animal for sure. And it can't just vanish because to me it seems like it can vanish. I mean, it does. But at the same time, it is a flesh and blood animal. I mean, I've seen it. So I really don't know. That's a hard question to answer.
I think that the only way to answer that is to say, I don't know. We really taking educated guesses based on experiences, and none of us know. I mean, we can guess all day long, and we're just taking guesses. But it's always a very interesting thing for me to talk about. I love to know other people's thoughts and opinions of what these things are. And it's such a strange world. There's so much in God's universe we're never going to understand. Seems like you go into this Bigfoot thing and you looking for answers, and you're never going to find the answers. It's a lot of questions. At the end of the day, we're left with these questions, and that's what keeps most of us coming back. And I appreciate you coming forward with that, and I appreciate your thoughts. And I also want to say I'm very thankful for your service to our country. I have a lot of respect for you guys, veterans. We wouldn't have the freedoms we have today if it wasn't for y'all. So I'm very grateful for that. I got another question for you, and if you had the opportunity to have another sighting, is that something you would want?
If I had the opportunity to have another encounter, even if it was even up to a dangerous encounter, yeah, I'd go all in.
Everybody has different thoughts on that. It's funny, you talk to people and they all have a different opinion. I've sit and thought about that a lot. I've seen this thing 3 times, and I think that 3 times is enough for me. Not to say that I wouldn't mind seeing it again, but it'd have to be the right circumstance for me, man. I've heard too many horror stories with these things. But one more thing I would like to ask you, just because I'm very fascinated by the culture that you have. And I think a lot of the history we have comes from that culture. In your tribe that you come from, what's the theory on Bigfoot? What's kind of I know a lot of times I talk to people and they call them man-eaters. Sometimes they're just another tribe. Like, what was the stories that you grew up hearing?
I believe, and I'm not even really sure because the tribe I come from is almost non-existent right now. It is the Halapu tribe of northern Newfoundland, Canada. And there is a Bigfoot creature in their heritage, but I believe it is the same Bigfoot type of creature that they tell you get your wife and kids in before dark. It'll come, it'll take your wife and kids, and you'll never see them again. That type of deal.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because you hear 2 sides of the table with that. I talk to a lot of people that is the history behind it. I was talking to a guy from, I believe it was Minnesota, I believe. No, Montana. It was from Montana. And he said in their tribe, they were known as man-eaters, and they would come down and they would steal the women and the children. And he was very adamant about that. And he had lots of stories throughout their history where this had happened. And so I'm always really curious because, there's got to be truth behind that. Because, I mean, they definitely have it all in their culture and their history. But I appreciate you coming on the show, man, for being brave enough to share that encounter. If somebody's sitting on an encounter and they're worried about coming forward with it, what advice would you give them?
No matter what you do, your daughter can turn 10, and you can come on Facebook and say, look, my daughter turned 10 today. You're going to have some person come on and go, she's not 10, she's 11. There's a hater out there no matter what. Just do what you got to do, enjoy life, and forget about them people. Enjoy it. Roll with it.
Solid advice, man. I really appreciate that. And thanks again for coming on the show. If you see something in the future, man, reach out, let me know. And again, thank you for your service. Guys, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's such an incredible thing when somebody comes forward and shares these type of encounters. When you're out driving in the country, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, this thing just ran out in front of him, and he wasn't expecting that. And that's what I love about this world. And every time I get an email, it gets me excited because I never know what's on the other side of that. And in God's universe, there's just a lot that we're never going to have answers for, but maybe we can talk about it. Maybe we can learn a little bit and grow a community along the way. And if you're sitting on an encounter and you're looking for a safe place to share it, I promise you here at Mysteries Unknown, I can absolutely give you that. So if you have an encounter, I would love to hear it. You can always email me at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. And I want to say real quick, especially since he's a veteran, if you're a veteran and nobody's told you today, thank you for your service. Our country would not be here without you. We wouldn't have the freedoms to do what we're doing, to have this podcast, to go get coffee, to do whatever we're going to do without people just like you. So if you're a veteran, law enforcement, first responder, you guys are awesome. And you have a safe place here at Mysteries Unknown, and we respect you guys and what you did. But thanks for listening tonight. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.